I got a question for you. If you are in a cult, do you know that you are in a cult? I don't think so. Maybe there's some scientific evidence out there to prove me wrong, but I don't think you know when you're in it. So this leads to an interesting video that we're going to watch here today. It's called Americans Fall for Cults Much Easier Than Brits. Here's why. And this is by my friend Girl Gone London. She's awesome. Always like to reach out to her, see if I can react to her videos. She's been kind enough to let me do that. So go on over there and support her channel. Link will be down below in the description. So on this channel, we learn about my new home, which is Europe. And we also try and get an understanding of what the hell happened to where we just thought America was the greatest and the best and all of these things. So this video is going to speak to that. Before we get going here, go ahead and like the video. That really does help a lot. Let's see what we can see.
6 people have been missing for months, and police now believe they've been lured into an online cult.
Oh, God.
Let's be done with it. Let's be done with the agony of it.
After 10 years of living in the UK, there's a noticeable lack of them here. But back in America, they are seemingly everywhere. And that made me wonder, are Americans more susceptible to cults? In this episode, I'm diving deep into American versus British attitudes towards cults to help explain why Americans seem to fall for them much, much more easily. But before we talk about the numbers of cults in each country or the different cultural attitude towards them, let's define what a cult actually is.
Yes,
because there's a difference between a cult and something that's cult-ish. A cult is a group with a particular and often dangerously fanatical ideology. The word cult comes from cultus, meaning worship, which is why...
Wait, a group with a particular and often dangerous fanatical
The word
ideology.
cult comes from cultus, meaning worship, which is why having a charismatic leader is often an important part of a cult. The recipe of a cult, if you will. There's nothing to follow if there's no leader. Some people argue that all religions are cults, depending on the definition you use, and certainly some religions follow this much more closely, but other characteristics of cults are things like secret knowledge. So you're not publishing your full beliefs openly, and you're relying on secret knowledge.
Like a secret society or something like that, I guess, is what she's saying.
Between members. Then there's things like toxic behaviors, as well as a degree of authoritarianism.
What the what? What's this?
Then there's things like toxic behaviors, as well.
What? Oh, God. I don't know who that is. Anybody know who that is? And what's going on with these things on the left?
As a degree of authoritarianism from the cult leader. In today's context, if you go to a Church of England service every Sunday and bake bread for the local neighbors and try to fundraise for homeless charities, and you are free to discuss your questions about doctrine and differing beliefs without being shunned, you're part of a religion, or you are religious. Okay. On the other hand, if you're part of a group that forces you to shave your head and says that they know the ultimate answer to your salvation as long as you pay increasing amounts of money to gain access to it, and you are banned from communicating with people outside of this group, congratulations, you're in a cult. Then some things are cult.
Yeah, I think she's about to say some things are cult-ish, because there's some organizations that I know that are somewhere in the middle of those two. Like, you're not shaving your head, but you're still beholden to the leader and the leader's thoughts. So maybe that's
cult adjacent or cult-ish. They don't fit the cult criteria, but the members act brainwashed or unable to consider other options, or are overly committed to something. Yeah. Some people joke, or maybe they're serious, that there's a cult around something like Apple products, for instance, or CrossFit. And then, of course, there are plenty of political cults.
Apple products? I mean, I guess there are some people that are like Apple through and through. CrossFit, yeah, I could see that. But the politics one is the one that I'm thinking here.
And things like life coaching opportunities that could be seen as a cult. But I wanted to discover why it seems so much more prevalent in the US than in the UK, and on researching just how many cults each country has, I was right. The US is considered to have over 10,000 cults, so plenty of choice if you feel like being in a cult is your calling. On the other
that was funny. 10,000 cults. Wow. Yeah, you got options. You know, hey, you want to be in a cult, move to the US of A, and you'll find one for sure.
And the UK has only around 2,000, which is a disappointment for those of you who wish to dedicate your lives to a toxic leader who will never have your best interests at heart. Now, part of it is the size of the country. It's obvious.
I mean, like I said, you can move to the United States if you want to be in a cult. You have options, right? Subscribe.
It's going to be easier to have more cults with more people, but there's more to it. Americans just seem to fall in love with cults. There's a podcast I love called Was I in a Cult?, which has enough content to fill multiple seasons. It features people who have left modern day cults, like Nixum, a self-help organization that turned into a cult featuring a guru called Keith who is linked to suspected sex trafficking. The women in the cult were branded with his initials, so that's all you need to know about how crazy it is.
Okay, so that's probably the lady. Branded with his initials. Damn, you just always think that'll never happen to me. Anybody branding me, but you just never know. I'm pretty sure that these people weren't thinking I'm going to go get branded or join some cult or something like that. Wow, that's crazy.
Then you have your classic cult, Scientology, as well as things like the 12 Tribes, a religious cult that believe that in order for the Messiah to return, they need to create a new Israel, which consists of 12 tribes located in 12 geographic regions. What? They also own a chain of restaurants in the US, Yellow Deli, which has this iconic review: good food, bad cult. And then, of course, in the US, you have historic cults like Jonestown or the People's Temple, which was led by a man named Jim Jones, which...
That was sad. I mean, all cults are sad, but I don't remember this one. I don't remember. I don't know the year. I think I was alive, but I don't remember it. I've just seen documentaries on it. It's sad.
Ended up with over 900 people dying from cyanide poisoning on the instruction of Jim Jones from drinking laced Kool-Aid. It's where the phrase "don't drink the Kool-Aid" comes from. Yeah. On the other side of the pond, you have UK cults, which are admittedly harder to find, and my internet search history is really weird right now, you guys. They do exist though. Scientology does exist within the UK. Then you have something like the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God, another religious cult that has ties in the UK. However, the craziness of American cults, like Heaven's Gate, for instance, a cult that believed they needed to leave this earth by their own hand at the same time as a passing comet so they could hop on board the UFO that was behind it, that's harder to find in the UK. But why? And I know that it's easy to just say, especially if you're British, well, Americans are crazy, and we're not. But there's more to it. First of all, as I've discussed multiple times before,
well, I mean, I almost said, well, that's true. But I don't know. Everywhere has crazy people. But it's not. No. Okay. Just let me stop.
America is a much more religious country than the UK. Historically, this makes sense. The original European settlers of the US were religious groups like the Puritans, and a history of immigration means that a lot of immigrants brought their religious views with them, including Catholicism and Judaism, and that religion often helps them stay connected and feeling to their homeland. And when I say Americans are more religious, I mean actively participating in religion, rather than just saying you're a Christian because you occasionally show up to the Christmas carol service at the local church. You can define yourself however you want, but the definition of what I'm saying as religious is not that. In the US, over 40% of Americans are in church at least once a month, with a solid 20% attending every single week.
Yeah, that's a true thing. And I bet you more people, I was going to say, I bet more people consider themselves to be religious, but they don't go to church than the ones that do. So that means that, you know, it's at least double what she's saying. I mean, I don't know. I would imagine that that's true, because there's a lot of people who, like my mother, for example, super religious, but she doesn't go to church. But, you know, my father was a pastor, so... And I have my own views on the church, but that we'll watch a video on that one day.
In the UK, with a solid 20% attending every single week. In the UK, this is about 5% of the population.
What?
And so why does this matter? If
5%? Wow. I didn't know that. Oh, that does matter a lot. So she said, why does this matter? Let's see what she says.
We're not saying that all religions are cults. So Americans are more religious. Does that necessarily mean they're more culty? Well, yes, in some ways. A quote on Reddit sums it up. It might seem very unusual in some countries, I guess, for someone to declare themselves a preacher and start drawing a congregation of their own. But that's not unusual at all in the US. So there's going to be that tiny number of them that will actually be fronts for wannabe cult leaders. And it can't be denied that in many religions,
I don't know. I feel like with religion, it's all based on a belief. I guess it depends on your religion, but the religion that I, was in my younger years, my mom's religion and all that, it was based on a belief. You believe that the Bible and, God's coming back or whatever, all these things you believe. And I feel like if you're in a cult, it's based on a belief. So you have to have, being in a religion kind of primes you to be someone who believes in something that you may or may not see. So I don't know, that's just my opinion.
Will actually be fronts for wannabe cult leaders. And it can't be denied that in many religions you follow. That's the whole point. Who you're following varies based on the religion, but if you're already primed to show up each week at church to follow this religious leader, it can make people more susceptible to following a cult leader. In America, we are used to this idea of a charismatic person standing on a stage to preach and telling us how to better our lives. And hopefully, and I'm not saying religion is a bad thing, hopefully it stops at that person standing on a stage telling you to love your neighbor and go feed the homeless and have faith in something outside of yourself. But
I'm gonna kind of change my opinion because I said that it's based on a belief, but I like what she said. It's true. You are primed to follow. I think that's more accurate.
You to love your neighbor and go feed the homeless and have faith in something outside of yourself. But sometimes it doesn't, and people are not necessarily primed to question it when it goes further and into cult territory until it's too late and you find yourself in a cult. In the UK, it may be easier for people to not fall into the trap of cults because there's already a lack of religiousness and the tendency to be okay with following in that sense. Next, you've got some practical reasons why Americans seem to love cults while Brits seem to give them the side eye. Some cults focus on things like salvation of your soul, which is outside of the remit of, the NHS, but a lack of institutional support within the US is another factor in cults compared to the UK. So in places like the UK and other advanced nations, there is what is known as top-down resources, like universal healthcare, more support for those struggling financially, council housing, etc. America is much more of a free-for-all. It's a great place to be rich and a very bad place to be poor or have health issues or be struggling because you don't have the institutional safety net like other countries do. And
that's true. Like the Scandinavian countries, which we just watched a video on.
Often, cults will prey on this, not necessarily to give you healthcare or whatever it is, but to help you. Smaller cults might be more like communes, where you can come live with them free of charge. Another type of cult is an MLM, standing for multi-level marketing. These are hugely popular in the US, and yes, they are still around, but less so in the UK. 99.6% of people in MLMs will make little to no money, with many of them losing money, but
I was in one, an MLM, like according to her, it's a cult. So maybe I was in a cult, but I was in one, and what she said is right. I spent way more money than I made.
They sell the idea of making money and guilt people into staying because the people at the top are making money off of everyone below. And they're telling you to ignore your friends and family who are warning you that this isn't a good business idea and to basically cut you off from the rest of your community and to find that community within the MLM so you don't realize you're being scammed.
That's true. And what they tell you is that these people who are telling you that you shouldn't do this, they don't see the dream. They are, stealing your dream. They are crabs dragging you down. I mean, they tell you all these things to where you believe that unless somebody believes like you, they're just losers. That's what you think when you're in one of these MLMs. It's interesting. I always knew that it was, like that. So, and the cult of that, the one that I did, it was Amway. I did that long years and years ago.
Pretty cultish, but more Americans will fall for this because,
Yep.
think about it. People who don't have that institutional safety net in life from a
Yep.
practical perspective are going to be much more willing to try anything they can to make money to make sure they don't end up homeless or without the
Right.
ability to pay for their healthcare costs than someone who does have a ground level of support from their
Right.
country and government, that there are going to be more options for them if they fall on hard times.
Right.
People don't usually join cults out of a fascination with wanting to hop on board a UFO to see if they can ride a comet to the next life. Often they join out of desperation. And to my next
Yeah.
point, sometimes people join out of loneliness or a need for connection. But don't people
Right.
in the UK need connection too, you might point out? Well, yes.
That was an interesting question. She kind of went by that pretty quick. What'd she say? Hold on.
Connection. But don't
Let's see
people
that.
in the UK
Americans more lonely than Brits? That is an interesting question. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. Maybe. I don't know. I probably would say yes.
need connection too, you might point out? Well, yes. And the UK is also an individualistic society like the USA when we compare them to countries like Japan or China. That
Right.
being said, America is one of the most individualistic societies in the entire world.
Yes.
American culture is influenced by stories of pioneers, individualists who were making do for themselves in a harsh land. And in some ways, this type of society can lead to good things.
That's true. It's presented as a society where you can come over to the country with nothing and be successful and become a multi-billionaire, an immigrant who succeeds, and everybody has a chance, and that's how it's presented. So that's true what she's saying. Let's go
in
back
a
a little.
harsh land. And in some ways, this type of society can lead to good things. Americans are much less likely to follow the grain when it comes to business ideas or innovation
Right.
or the status quo, which means it's a great place for entrepreneurship, but it's also a great place for cults, which seems to contradict itself, because why would people in an individualistic society need a community? Surely they are taught to only think about yourself. The thing is, no matter where you're born, humans are human, and we
Yeah, and thinking, I mean, when you're lonely, you're not just thinking about yourself. So you're thinking of wanting to be with someone else, but or just being accepted. So, man, that's an interesting dilemma to have, but it's a great question.
about
Shannon.
yourself. The thing is, no matter where you're born, humans are human and we need connection.
Yeah.
So while the UK is individualistic as well, it's a bit less so than in the US. There is still an overall shared consciousness of things like the wars that meant that people had to band together and take collective action to survive. Even during the pandemic, you saw this in the UK versus the USA. The British were more likely to do their part and try and stay home, to not put too much strain on the NHS, and to feel that they were in it together. On the other hand, many Americans were annoyed from day one that someone was trying to tell them what to do. So while the UK has a little bit more in the way of feeling part of a collective, in America we don't. We even make sure that everyone knows how much power each individual state has when compared to the country as a whole.
Right.
America is fragmented and individualistic, and thus people need to find connection somewhere. Often they find it in religion. It is very common in the US for your main social group and connection to be through your church or religious group.
That is true. And I would say, from my personal experience in the Black community, it is probably 10 times more than any other community. And excuse me, it was rooted in slavery because, they used religion as like a refuge from all the stuff that they were going through. That's why you have all these Negro spirituals or all of these hymnals and things like that, because, they relied on church and religion. So, and it's that way. I mean, you can have somebody who's a pimp Monday through Saturday, and is in church on Sunday looking good. But I'm just being real. That's how it is in the Black community over there for sure.
common in the US for your main social group and connection to be through your church or religious group. But unfortunately, many times people find it in cults that promise that sense of belonging and protection from the constant stress of an individualistic society. And finally, to have a cult, you need a cult leader, and a cult leader usually needs to be charismatic, a good speaker, and sweet talking in some way. That's what gets people on their side and to trust them. And culturally, America helps people develop these skills. America...
Wait. America places more emphasis on confident public speaking. Yes. Oh, man. I was a public speaker. And I used to go to what's called Toastmasters over there, where we meet once a week. I think it was once a week, and you learn how to speak in front of people. And, you know, there's a whole community of motivational speakers out there that they just want to be a charismatic leader. So
is very much a performance-based society. I am not suggesting that in the UK, children and young adults do not learn about public speaking or have to do it in school, but in America, we really lean hard into it. Over and over again in school, we were always doing performance-based activities, constant presentations, and marks for how well we present, project, and how clear we are to understand. We see this as a sign of confidence and competence, and we are really celebrated for it at an early age. Many of us also have to participate in
Wait, so she's saying that like they don't do that in the UK. Is that true? Like you don't have presentations and everything like that? Wow. That causes so many other like social anxiety, all these other things that come from that. So, you know, I don't know. I guess there's good and bad to it, but that's interesting. I did not know that.
A lot of extracurricular activities, as we call them, in order to be admitted to university. The system and what they look for is different than in the US. So we're all in things like debate club, or as a personal example, I was vice president of the Spanish Honor Society in high school, which was sort of something you joined if you had good grades in Spanish and wanted it to look good for college. But I had to give a speech at the age of 16 in Spanish to an auditorium of parents and students. Often, the confidence that people see when I am presenting is funny to me, because I am actually not somebody who is at the head of a social group or the one talking the most or the loudest at any sort of social event. I'm usually in the corner eating snacks to try and avoid it all. But when it comes to presenting and public speaking and entertaining and informing in this way, I am confident because I learned how to be within the system I grew up in. But instead of starting a cult, I decided to start a YouTube channel, so I would like to think I'm using my powers for good rather than evil. And so there you have it. Perhaps you can apply these learnings to recent events, that's up to you, but I hope this helped break down why those in the US seem a lot more willing to sign up for what seems like crazy and incredibly fringe movements. Whereas those in the UK seem a lot less interested and mainly want to be left alone to tend to their gardens or go to the pub or meet up with friends to do non-culty activities. Thanks very much for watching.
She was great. That was a great video. Super informative. Had some funny moments in it. I really do appreciate it. It's interesting. She pointed out some very important pieces of information there, and I think a lot of it has to do, a lot of the what's going on in the US right now is some form of cultization. I don't know what the word is, but I think it is. There are charismatic leaders, one in particular who's leading the whole country, that people fall behind no matter what the hell he says. He could say something today and say something different tomorrow, and they'll be behind both of those opinions. It doesn't matter. But anyway, not to turn this into that type of video. Besides, the video's over. All right. Hopefully you liked it. If you did, then go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel, man. Come on. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Greg. We'll catch you on the next video. Peace.